You're watching a replay of Brain Drain with Rich Cabaceres. For more videos just like this, hit that red subscribe button.
And good morning. Happy Monday. Hopefully you don't have a case of the Mondays. This is Brain Drain. I am Rich Cabaceres coming to you live from our stations in Somerset, Massachusetts. We are 1480 WSAR, coming to you around the world, WSAR.com's Spindle City Auto Glass Studio Cam. You can get us on Facebook Live, on the J&J Jewelers Facebook Live feed. You can comment below and join the conversation, because today we are talking about common courtesy, and does it still exist? Do people still care about their neighbors? Do people still care about the people who are around them? Or are they more concerned about themselves? So much so that they're not even willing to portray common courtesy. And this can dive into a couple of things, right? And it's all spurred because about Thursday, after my show, after I got done with the workday, I went home, and what did I see on the sidewalk except but some dog poop? And not only did I see dog poop, but I saw somebody had stepped in that dog poop and tracked it all over the sidewalk. So why is it that people don't have the common courtesy to pick up after their pets? Why is it that they just let their animals crap all over the ground? So do people have common courtesy? But we can extend this even further, right? What about people who drive on the highway and they drive in the left lane and they're going just the speed limit, or they're going slightly below the speed limit, and they're blocking people from being able to pass people? Because the left lane on a highway is a passing lane. And guess what? You shouldn't be driving in that lane if you're going the speed limit, if you're going slightly below the speed limit, because you can potentially cause a traffic jam that emergency vehicles aren't going to be able to get to where they need to be. Also, it's just not courteous, right? So then we can also add to that conversation, beyond the dog poop and picking up after your animals, beyond the driving and the lack of courtesy that people have while driving. How about when you're leaving a place and somebody in front of you, instead of holding the door for you to get there, they just let the door close with no apology? They just, hey, you know what? You're irrelevant. My world is egocentric, and you and everybody else in the world surrounding me, or that person, they aren't concerned about the people around them. And they're, day after day after day, you see some of these common courtesies that aren't happening anymore. So let's dive into why that happens. And I want to hear some examples from you. You can call in and join the conversation, 508-673-1480. I want to hear some examples about common courtesies that you think weren't extended to you, or mistakes that you've made in the past that you felt bad about. And let's dive into what the cause of this is. Do you think it's because of examples that were set? Do you think it's because of the society that we're in today, that people don't respect or care about other people? I really am interested in hearing what you have to say about this. We're also going to talk about, a little bit later in the show, the $1.5 trillion that the Trump administration is looking to spend on infrastructure. And, you know, we can kind of tie that in. Do you think that the President of the United States has common courtesy, or do you think that some of his Twitter actions lack common courtesy? And we're going to go to a call before we go to the break. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Morning, sir.
How you doing?
Good. I get pleasure. I take when the wind on a windy day, when all my neighbors they're at work and the trash barrels go in the street, I always remove them from the street and put them in the yard. I'm the only guy in the neighborhood, I think, that does it.
How about that? So you're actually going above and beyond to make sure that your neighbors' barrels don't get ruined. Well, I guess they're really city barrels or town barrels, but you actually go above and beyond to try to make sure that your neighbors have a more a better lifestyle. Let's say
well, these neighbors are pretty good people. They save a lot of their bottles and cans for me, recycle them, and they give them to me.
Oh, that's great.
And I also go around with a little stick and I pick up papers at the street. I'm always constantly indicting, picking up papers off the street, because I'm tired. I don't like litter. I worked for the DPW for almost 30 years, so maybe that's why I got in that habit of being clean, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, another thing, and actually you worked for the DPW, so you get this. How about snow removal or ice removal if you live in a place that's in the north? a lot of times you'll see people out there. It will be this elderly male, this elderly woman who's out there removing snow and ice, and there's completely capable young people who are just sitting back and allowing this to happen. Do you
Yeah,
think
another thing about young people, I got to get going because I'm waiting for a ride. But another thing, Mr. Rick, is you hold the door for somebody or say thank you or excuse me. You know what these millennials tell you? Instead of you're welcome or anything, they go, yep, yep.
Well, it's funny because a thing that they do down south is they go, mm-hmm. So if you live in the South, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you say thank you to somebody, they go, mm-hmm, or something along those lines. And I don't know if that's being courteous or if it's acknowledging, but that's exactly what happens. So the first time I ever went down south, I was 17 years old. It was 2001. And I can remember I'm in Fort Benning, Georgia, and I say thank you to the person who served me lunch. And she goes, mm-hmm. Like, what does that mean?
All right, man. Listen, I got to get going. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Hey, have a great day. Good luck with the ride. Let's dive back into the conversation. Let's talk about common courtesy. And I gave you something to think about over the break, right? Let's talk about the words God bless you after somebody sneezes. So now, more than ever, people are taking offense to the words God bless you after you sneeze. And even if you don't really practice religion, people still use the words God bless you after a sneeze. And it seems that people are getting offended by the common courtesy of saying God bless you. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that? Because all it's really doing is it's causing people to say God bless you less and less and less. So why do you think that is? And regardless if you're religious or not, what's the problem with somebody extending some common courtesy? What is the problem with that? Even they're not really forcing their beliefs on you. They're just kind of saying, "God bless you." Like it just comes out, and now it's kind of "God bless you," right? So if you really look at how people are saying it today, it's like GABLESYU. God bless you. It sounds like kuzuntai, or the Japanese word. We turned it into a Japanese word because people are afraid to use the words God bless you to talk about a sneeze. And really, when we think about it, is this people trying to push their faith onto you, or is this people just being kind? Let's bring it back to the dog poop example. Why do you not pick up after your pets? Right? The common courtesy would be if your dog craps on the ground, if you yourself are going to have to avoid stepping on that over and over and over again, then maybe your neighbors are going to have to do the same thing. So maybe you should pick up, or in a park, when your dog runs through the park and it poops, guess what? You may want to pick up afterwards because it could be you who then turns and steps on that dog poop. And you could use that not just with dog poop, gum. Don't spit your gum on the ground, spit it in the trash. Hold on to it a little bit longer. Consider the people who are around you as opposed to just considering yourself. So why is this happening? Why is society falling apart when it comes to courtesy? Or should we not be courteous? So let's dive into it a little bit more. Do you think that people today are less courteous than they were 20, 30, 50 years ago? And why do you think that is? There's one thing that's common about today. People are more willing to speak their mind, which is important. I think it's really important that people are open and honest about what they feel, as opposed to just kind of keeping everything inside or saying something that they really don't mean. Now, this could be portrayed in multiple places, but unfortunately, at least in my opinion, in the past, is courtesy went too far, right? Courtesy was the type of thing where people would not say what they really meant and say what they thought people wanted to hear, or say, and we see that in politics. People say what they want people to hear or what they think people want to hear, as opposed to what they need to hear. Now imagine if every single person in the entire world, when you have, say, a booger in your nose that's hanging out, somebody says, "Hey, by the way, you got a booger in your nose." And you go to the bathroom, you fix it, and you're fine. But wouldn't that be a lot better than walking around the entire day with a booger in your nose and nobody having the common courtesy to tell you that there's a booger there? Because everybody's looking at it, everybody's noticing it, but nobody has told you that there's a booger in your nose. And maybe that's the problem with courtesy previously. Maybe that's the problem with politics. Politics is like the person, and the problem is like the booger, right? So what happens is politicians tell you what you want to hear, so they don't tell you about the booger in your nose. They tell you what they think you want to hear. Oh, you're looking good today, even though there's this booger that's hanging out of your nose, and all they have to do is just tell you, and you'd be fixed. You're live on Legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, good. What gets to me is when you all done shopping and the person at the register is the one that should be saying thank you, not you, but I do say thank you anyway, and they say no problem. And I'm like, during this transaction, was there ever like a moment that could have been a problem or something?
So I think the word "no problem" is the same as your. Well, I say "no problem" on a regular basis,
I don't think it should be done,
meaning that I had no problem with providing you the service.
I don't know. I think that's just an excuse. I don't even think it should be no problem.
So I think as long as they extend the courtesy back, but honestly, in my opinion, we should both be thanking each other in that situation, right?
Absolutely.
It should be thank
right.
you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Right? We should be thanking each other because me as the person purchasing should be thanking you for providing me with the service, and you as the person providing the service should be thanking the person for being a customer, right? You're live on the Legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Well, good morning, Rich.
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Not bad. See, that was common courtesy right there.
Okay. The gentleman that just called, I'm in complete agreement with him about when people say no problem.
Okay.
When you say, well, thank you for whatever bank transaction in the grocery store, whatever, and they say no problem, why can't they just say you're welcome?
And, you know, it's funny because when you say... So I've worked as a cashier before, and I've worked with the public on a regular basis. And when you say the same thing over and over and over and over again, it becomes disingenuous.
That's right. It becomes ingrained.
Right.
Ingrained. But, you know, when you say to someone, well, thank you very much, and they say no problem, it's like, why can't they say you're very welcome?
And, again, when I say the words no problem, I look at it as me saying that it wasn't a problem for me to provide you with the service. Like, I also say, no big deal, or happy to do it. You know, I think it's the same kind of thing to say all those things. Like, happy to do it is the equivalent of no problem. Just no problem is easier to say. And think of how many things that we say through the course of the day that we just have. Like, for instance, you said to me, good morning. I said, good morning. You said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, or I'm doing okay, right? So we have these things that are ingrained into our skull that we just have common responses for, even if sometimes the question isn't even asked that way, and we respond in a way that we think we're being asked because we're not listening to other people.
And I think that's why courtesy is something that's like a lost art. Another thing, too, is when someone says, have a good one.
Yeah, I think have a good
what? Have a good walk? Have a good cup of coffee?
Have a good whatever you want.
Yeah.
I say have a good one.
Right, but how about have a good day?
You know, and you could have a good day, but you could have a good year, right? Have a good one could be anything that the person, the beholder, perceives. So I think talking about what they actually mean when they say it, like even, and I talked about, I think that that's the equivalent of saying no problem, or it's just, I think it's just the culture or the society is saying that when I say thank you to somebody, and in the South they say, it comes across as weird to me because I'm from the North and I say things like no problem. But really, when they say, they're saying you're welcome.
Well, I remember a number of years ago, we had gone shopping, and my husband held the door for a young lady coming through, and she said, I can do it myself.
Wow,
okay?
Really?
How about that for kicking the teeth?
Yeah, no kidding.
As far as God bless you, you know, and I'm not religious, quote unquote. I'm spiritual, because religion is man's way of trying to get to God. Spirituality is God's way to get to man.
Okay.
So I'm not quote unquote religious, but you know, God bless you. What's wrong with that?
I don't see anything wrong with that. And to the person who said I can do it myself, your husband should have said, okay, wait right there. He should have closed the door and he should have left.
No, he's not that type of person. But you know what? That would have warranted saying, okay, that's what you want, sweetheart? That's what you got. Slam, you know?
Right.
But courtesy is something that should be freely given and should be freely accepted.
Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
God bless your day.
Bless you too.
Thank you.
You're live at the legendary 1480 WSAR. How you doing?
Good morning, Rich. I'm well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. What say you?
Well, based on your last two callers, maybe people are a little too picky about the responses they get. I mean, I'm probably a little bit younger than them. But, you know, anytime someone says no problem, that's fine with me. That's something I say quite a bit. To me, it's the same thing as saying it was my pleasure, you know?
Right.
But as far as it goes, one of the things you brought up is funny to me. I will seriously give people a piece of my mind that I work with if, you know, one of the worst things is, especially around Christmas, is you have a piece of glitter on your face somewhere.
Yep.
And no one decides to tell you. And you walk around all day, you know, looking shiny and sparkly. And that drives me crazy. I have yelled at people and just been like, listen, if there's something on my face, have the common courtesy to tell me. No, it's impossible. I'm not going to get upset over it. In fact, I'd be upset if you don't tell me.
Right.
Because who knows how long I've been walking around looking silly.
Right. That's like having a piece of toilet paper stuck to your butt walking around wherever you're walking around. Everybody's looking at it, but nobody's telling you.
Yeah, and I think people are so, you know, they're afraid they're going to offend someone or get nervous. It's the same thing as telling someone, you know, hey, your shoe's untied. It's not that I'm doing it to upset you or bother you. It's because, you know, it's, you know, you could get hurt or you look silly and, you know, it's not your fault, but you can fix it. Just tie your shoe, or if you have glitter on your face, wipe your face, you know?
I'm in agreement with you 100%. So I think there's...
Rich.
I think that... Have a great day. And I think there's a happy medium between having courtesy and telling people the truth. You should be able to have courtesy and still tell people the truth. Because you're actually not being courteous if you're not telling somebody about the glitter on your face or the booger in your nose or their shoes untied or the toilet paper stuck to their butt. You're lacking courtesy in that point in time. So you can still be courteous and tell people the truth at the same time. Unfortunately, people take one extreme or the other. And to continue the conversation, we're talking about common courtesy and why is it that people don't have it. And we got into the God bless yous. We got into the dog poop that's on the side of the road. Let's talk about driving courtesy. And I hinted towards it a little bit earlier today. People who drive in the left lane, the passing lane. If you are on a 3-lane highway and you're driving in the left lane and you're going exactly the speed limit, not only are you wrong, you're lacking courtesy. And people who give the excuse, oh, well, people shouldn't be driving over the speed limit. Well, here's the thing when you lack courtesy driving in the left lane doing exactly the speed limit. You're contributing to the potential that people may get into a car accident. Because sometimes people decide that they want to drive 5 miles an hour faster than the speed limit. And it is actually statistically proven safer that people who are driving at the flow of traffic are less likely to get into a car accident than people who are varying their speed, or they have variances in their speeds because they're swerving and they're slowing down and they're speeding up. That's where the accidents are caused. So when you are in the left lane driving 65 miles an hour and somebody has to swerve around you, you are contributing to the potential that somebody could get into a car accident because of nothing more than the lack of courtesy. You shouldn't be pushing your beliefs onto people. You should just, do your own thing. How about that? How about just be courteous enough to make sure that if you're driving and you're doing the speed limit, don't be in the left lane. You can be in the middle lane, but if you're driving slower than everybody else and the flow of traffic is going 5 miles an hour faster than the speed limit, then you might want to be in the right lane. Because ultimately, what could happen is you could cause a major accident. And it might not be just a regular motor vehicle driver. It might not be somebody who's driving 10 miles an hour faster than the speed limit because they want to speed or they're late to an appointment or whatever it may be. It may very well be a public safety vehicle. It may very well be somebody who is trying to get somebody to the hospital, trying to get somebody to a place they need to be in order to live longer or get the treatment that they need. And you, by being stubborn, could potentially impede that. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What's that you? Oh. Wow. Okay. So we're going to continue the conversation, and I see people calling in, 508-673-1480. Lines are kind of heating up a little bit right now. But and something else to consider when you're driving on the highway is using your directionals, right? That is the law. Using your directionals. People will move into different lanes. People will take turns without using directionals. And that is common, not only common courtesy, that is the law. What say you? You're live.
Hello, yes.
Good morning.
Yes. What is the speed limit?
So,
over here, wait a minute. The speed limit, if it's 65, you're supposed to go 65.
right.
The law does not say you have to go over 5 miles over the speed limit.
Okay.
You're breaking the law.
Okay.
You should obey the speed limit. That's
Okay.
the reason. And also in the school area, too. And they're
So-
going to be beyond the 20 miles an hour.
So
They
here,
say, well, they won't pull us over because they'll allow 5 minutes. That is breaking the law.
okay,
You
so
obey the speed limit. Thank you.
that's a fair point. And I'm sorry that you didn't want to have a conversation about this, but here's an interesting point of that. If you aren't a police officer, it is not your job to enforce the law. It is not your job to tell everybody else that they have to go the speed limit. You should be following the law yourself. And if somebody decides that they want to go outside of the law and go 5 miles an hour faster, then that is their prerogative and they have to deal with the consequences. That's like if you decide that you want to call somebody a derogatory term. You have the free speech in order to do so. But there may be some consequences along with that. So I hear what you're saying, that the word is limit, and you're not supposed to go above that. But again, the statistical analysis is showing that people are safer if there isn't deviations in speed and people are naturally flowing. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Very good, thank
Do me
you.
a favor. Turn the radio down in the background.
I'm leaving the room.
All right, perfect.
Other thing that the law, driving without lights on in the rain, you're going on the highway, and all of a sudden you've got a person right on your left that you haven't even seen coming because they don't have their lights on. Going on 24 is very treacherous, and this happens all the time. The lights are supposed to go on when it's raining. It's the law.
Now, it's funny that you say that because a lot of times I look at this as if it's ignorance more so than it's people who are willfully not doing it. And here's why. Majority of the modern cars today have an automatic sensor that turns the lights on when they need to and turn them off when they don't need to. And because of that, people a lot of times don't even know how to turn their lights on. So when it rains out and it gets a little bit foggy, sometimes these lights don't come on. And it's nothing but ignorance. I don't think it's being lacking courtesy. I think it's they simply don't know that the lights aren't on.
I think it's laziness, to tell you the truth.
Well, it could be that, but here's the equivalent. How many people can you sit in a standard vehicle and they would be able to drive that 5-speed, that 6-speed vehicle today? Not a lot, right? If you put a 19-year-old in a 5-speed vehicle where they have a clutch and they have to shift from gear to gear, they're not going to be able to do it. And the reason is because they're kind of obsolete, where at one point in time, that's all you could get. And in Europe, that's all you can get. Same thing with the lights. Because the lights, what happens is they're so used to them turning on and off on their own that they don't even know that they can switch them on manually. One more thing about this, I actually had to tell somebody who is a young millennial, they're close to Generation Z, how to switch to AM on their car radio. Right? So I don't think that it's lack of courtesy. I think it's ignorance.
Well, it's also very dangerous.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. It is ultimately dangerous, and if you're in a state that there isn't a law regarding lights when it's raining out, it's good safety practice to turn them on. But part of the issue is people then forget to shut them off. Because they're used to, and think about it this way, they are used to them shutting off automatically. And I made this mistake a bunch. I'd turn on my lights when it was raining out, and then when it would stop raining, I'd forget to shut them off. So then I'd come out to a dead battery.
Well, I've done that also, but you learn fast once you come back and have a non-responsive car.
Or you just keep on forgetting.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. You're live at the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Yeah, good morning. You was talking about people driving in the high-speed lane. Well, you know, the thing is, I drove truck for years, and it's always been the understanding, and I think it's in the manuals, is that the highway is when you get on. Okay, there's it's a on-ramp and off-ramp, and the second lane is a travel lane, and the third lane is a passing lane.
Okay.
So everyone is supposed to be actually traveling in the travel lane.
Okay.
And you move. If you want to pass, you pass in the passing lane.
That's if it's a 3-lane road,
and
though.
then you go back into the travel lane. And then if you're getting off, you get into the off-ramp lane.
But in the case of a 2-lane...
That's the proper way of driving, not just because it's 65 miles an hour. And you're traveling... that's not correct.
Now, in the case of a 2-lane road... A 2-lane road...
2-lane road is the same thing.
The left lane is not the travel lane.
No, the right lane is a travel lane.
Right.
And the left lane, if you notice the markings in the road, sometimes you'll have the broken lines for passing onto the other side of the roadway.
Yep.
Okay. So you have that also. So there's different rules. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So people that travel in the high-speed lanes and they're doing 65, they're actually making it difficult for people that's driving correctly.
I agree. I agree with you 100%.
Because you're traveling at a mile an hour, whatever that might be. And I think it's a 65. You can't go any lower than the 45 because it's breaking the law.
And the funny thing is, there's actually laws that saying that you can't cruise in the left lane. It's called left lane blocking, and you can get pulled over for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So people, they think they're doing the proper thing by going, I'm going 65, and he wants to go by me. Well, he has a right to go by you but you're in the wrong lane.
It's sad.
You should be in the travel lane. I mean, if he's speeding, that's another thing. I mean, that's not his decision. His decision to drive properly and be in the lane he should be in.
And how about that? It's not your job, if you're not a law enforcement officer, to make sure that everybody else is following the law on the highway. It's your job to make sure that you're following the law.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's exactly like you said. If he's coming behind you and he's doing above the speed limit, it's not up to you to say, "Well, I'm going to go 65." So now this guy's going to turn around and pass you in the travel lane, which he's not supposed to do.
Right.
You follow me? So now you're causing a problem, an issue, you know.
Somebody on Facebook Live said, as long as they're not driving the wrong way.
Right. Anyway, I think I threw that in there anyways.
You got it. Thank you for your call. Have a great day.
You too, my friend. Bye.
Somebody there said, you should see the way that people drive in Florida. That's where they are right now. Thank you for watching. We're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Rich. I'd like to change gears on you there, if I could.
Sure. I like the car pun, by the way, but go for it.
Okay. I was wondering what is so special about pizza boxes, cardboard pizza boxes that don't have any grease in them, why we can't put them in the recycled bins. I don't understand that part.
All right, so if you have a recycling system throughout the entire country and there is grease on pizza boxes, that makes it contaminated. But as you stated, if there's no grease on it, then it should be a recyclable item. I think the reason why they're saying that you can't use a pizza box at all is because some people will throw their pizza boxes in with grease, so they're making it so it's, I'm going to use the term idiot-proof.
I see. They left me a nice warning this morning, a warning slip, for 2 pizza boxes that are spotless, and took pictures of the house. It's unbelievable to me.
So here's what I suggest is, so this is something I actually do. When I have a pizza box, I cut the grease out of the box and I throw it into the recycle bin.
Well, there's no grease in the box for me to cut out.
Right. So you know what? I'd say ultimately at the end of the day, if you decide that you're going to recycle that item, it's going to be very difficult for them to enforce it. And also, I'd say if you live in the city of Fall River, Massachusetts, they don't have the balls to enforce it anyway. Thank you for your call.
Very good. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Well, good morning, sir.
Morning. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Common courtesy.
You got it.
Yeah, I think some places are scripted.
Okay. And
like you have yourself a great day, sir. Come shop with us again, sir.
Well, you're right. There are some places
that drives me nuts.
There are some places that are purposely scripted to try to give you that one last effort at a sales pitch to potentially upsell you. And I think that it's important that we just display common courtesy and turning your blinker or your turn signal or your directional, whichever you want to call it, whatever part of the country you're in. And if you have a funny name for a turn signal, please call in and let me know. But yeah, just doing those common courtesy things doesn't only make you feel better, but it also makes everybody around you feel better too, and they may reciprocate. And just because somebody isn't doing the right thing doesn't mean that you should then go and do the wrong thing. It means that you should continue to do the right thing. So if you're driving 65 miles an hour on the highway and you're driving in the travel lane, then you're doing the right thing. Right. That doesn't mean that you then impose, that doesn't mean that you're a public safety officer and you impose a speed limit. That also doesn't mean that you should then speed 75 miles an hour because everybody else is doing it. It just means that you should continue doing the right thing and hope that everybody else does. Go ahead.
How about those who ride the high speed lane and don't move over?
That's exactly what that's called left lane blocking. And if you're going 65 miles an hour, if the speed limit is 65, or 75 miles an hour, if the speed limit is 75 or 55, whatever the speed limit may be, you are potentially causing an accident. And the reason is because that lane is for passing. And every time that somebody who's driving fast has to deviate for whatever reason, you potentially can cause an accident.
The best one about courtesy is like when you, I was in a drive-in at the bank, going through I call it the drive-thru. I'm old-fashioned. And I'm sitting there with the teller, and she's at the window, and the car pulls behind me and bumps me, pushes me. I got a tank for it.
So here's something funny.
Pushes me.
Here's something funny. Somebody on Facebook Live says if they don't use their directionals, especially when they have a new vehicle, I pull up on the side of them and tell them they need a car, to bring their car back because they pay too much because the blinkers don't work.
I got a light out on one of mine. So I got to fix that. But anyway, the car. Then even the teller said, "That car just hit you?" I said, "Yeah, it just hit me. It's okay." Anyway, they backed up, got into the next lane, and stood there and wouldn't look at me. Would not acknowledge me, would not say, "I'm so sorry," or nothing. I'm like, okay. It's unbelievable, some folks.
Isn't it? It's unbelievable the lack of courtesy that people have. And you know what? Here's one for you. If you get into a car accident, even if it's the other person's fault, you should probably go and make sure that that person is okay. They could be dealing with a cardiac incident. They could be dealing with something that is seriously wrong in their day, and by you simply checking in on them could potentially save their lives. And a lot of times what you see is people, they want to fight you because you get into a car accident. So think about the logic behind this. Insurance is covering it. If it's your fault, then your insurance is going to cover it anyway, and then they want to turn around and fight you.
Yeah, as long as you got insurance.
Well, yeah, as long as you got insurance. But really, when you think about this, people want to add insult to injury by fighting each other because they get into a car accident. And the word accident it's not like they purposely hit you. What is fighting going to do? It's just going to throw you both in jail.
I'll give you this one. My wife, my vehicle, I guess, the door, some other car, the door swung open and caught the side of my car. She looked over at the next lane, and there's my paint on the car. She calls the police. They go to the house, and the guy says, "Hey, I haven't been out of here all day. I don't know how that could happen," and all this good stuff. Then the child said, "Daddy, you were just outside." The kid was the one that said it. That the father was outside. So, you know, it's a common courtesy. You know, you just damage someone's car and it didn't matter to you.
You got it.
All right, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care.
Studio Cam. We're talking about common courtesy today. That's right. And you know, it's kind of turned into a conversation about driving on the roads because the use of people using directional signals, the people who drive in the left lane and insist on doing the speed limit, which is actually more dangerous than speeding in and of itself, and justifying it by saying, well, everybody else should be driving the speed limit too. Well, to those folks, you are not a police officer. And if you are, and you're doing that off-duty, then you're in the wrong too, police officer. But you should be following the law and expecting everybody else to follow the law, and it's up to the municipalities and the states and the federal government to enforce the laws, not vigilante people who are driving in the left-hand lane, who are cruising at 65 miles an hour and causing people to drive around them and swerve around them and causing the potential for more accidents. And by the way, by you doing that, you're potentially committing a crime in and of itself, which is called left lane blocking. And there are a lot of states in the United States who are enforcing this law. I know one of the big states that's doing it right now, I believe actually, it's Connecticut. And I've driven through a lot of these states, and they'll specifically say that the left lane is for passing if you are on a 3-lane highway, and if you're cruising in the left lane, then you are in the wrong. So somebody pointed out on Facebook Live that they believe that Rhode Island has the worst drivers out there. So wherever you live in this country, call in and tell me. Somebody else said that Florida is crazy. So Massachusetts, as somebody who lives in Massachusetts, I can tell you, Massachusetts is crazy. So the question becomes, is there anywhere in the United States that isn't crazy when it comes to driving? And there are some roads in the United States where people can drive for hours and not see anybody, and the speed limits are practically non-existent. So let's dive into that. Let's dive into the left lane and how dangerous that actually is. So when you're driving in the left lane and you're cruising at 65 miles an hour or 55 miles an hour or whatever the speed limit may be, you have the potential to cause a car accident, not just with the average person, but with a public safety vehicle, because they're using that lane to get to somewhere expeditiously. So how do you know that the person that you're blocking behind you isn't somebody who's trying to bring a loved one to the hospital? How do you know that their wife isn't having a baby right now? How do you know that their husband isn't having a heart attack right now? How do you know that there's an emergency and they have to be there because maybe their parent is passing away, or their child is in the hospital and they need to get there as quickly as possible? Or it could be a police officer who's 10 vehicles back and you're holding up traffic because you're sitting in the left lane. There's so many different variables here. And if you feel it's your job to enforce the speed limit and you think that that's not causing accidents, it's helping to reduce accidents, then I'll point to this for you. The Autobahn, Germany. Right? The Autobahn has certain portions of the Autobahn that have no speed limit whatsoever. And people cruise down that left-hand lane, flying by people at 3-digit speeds. And if you get into that lane, you're more likely than not going to cause an accident. But here's the interesting part about the Autobahn. There's less accidents on the Autobahn than you would expect, even though they have no speed limit. You know why? Because people respect the passing lane. You don't go in the passing lane unless you're planning on going 3-digit speeds, because you're probably going to cause an accident. So majority of the people drive in the traveling lane, and they only get into the left lane if they're passing somebody. And because of that, the rate of crashes is not very high when you compare it to majority of American highways. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Hello?
How you doing?
Oh, yeah, good. How you doing? I like the program. I got some pet peeves. I got about 4, and then you can go over them with the people.
Go for it.
People do not obey. If I got to stop at a crosswalk for someone, then they should not have the right to go against the light and run out, and they're showing the kids that. They're showing the kids, or especially around Rodman Street.
So, wait, you're saying people are walking... So
it's green for me, yet they walk right across. And there are buttons there for them to push. They walk right across. On Rodman Street, they cut between cars. Now, if they're going to fine me for not stopping for them, they should have those guys they have running around, the pocket guys should go around, and if they see that, write a ticket. You write a few and stop. When we were in school, you cross at the corner. You got kids crossing in front of you. You got kids on bikes. Totally out of control.
So here's something funny.
If we hit them, we're wrong.
So here's something funny. If you are crossing in the middle of the street instead of on the corners at the crosswalks, and you get hit by a car, and that person can say that they didn't see you coming out between two vehicles, that person is going to die or get really, really hurt, and it's not going to be the driver's fault.
Yeah, well, but it's on your conscience. You know what I mean?
Right, it's on your.
Why? And what gets me is they're showing the little kids it's all right to dodge between cars. That's not right. So a generation of kids think I can go. I don't need that green light. I don't need that box. And at one time we didn't have the push buttons. We do, Rich. That's number one. Number two, you know what really aggravates me? When someone jumps the light. Is that against the law? You're in line, say Rodman Street, and they cut through Walgreens to beat the light.
Oh, that's against the law all day long.
Really
So here's an example. If you are on a corner and there's a red light, and just for everybody else, I know exactly what you're saying. But if you're on the corner and there's a red light and you can cut through a parking lot to avoid that red light, you have broken the law.
Yeah. I told that to my neighbor. He said no. I said, of course you have. I don't let them in. And the other thing is, I do a lot of driving to Boston. The biggest factor I see, have them read the signs. If the sign says left lane closed, why do you wait until on top of the sign and then start hollering at me that I'm in my right lane? You know what I mean? The sign's 2 miles back. This lane closes in a mile. This lane closes 1/3 of a... And yet these people now they're all frustrated because now they want to kill me to get into my lane. I think that we got to have a rethink. Every night the paper should run a proper rule. The other big thing is people don't realize you're at a stop sign. I'm in back of you. I do not have the right to go. Am I right? I still have to stop for the stop sign, right?
Everybody has to stop if there's a stop sign in front of them.
No, not my neighbors. They feel that you're in line. You're in front of me. I'm in back of you, Rich. You go. I can go out with you.
No, that's breaking the law.
Yeah. And the rolling stops.
But again, it's not your job to enforce the law, and you understand that. It's just a pet peeve.
It's just being out there and going to Boston and driving so much. I mean, I look at it this way. After 3 o'clock, I'm off the roads in Fall River.
Right.
Because you got all the buses, and they're good drivers. It's the people picking up the kids. They double park. They leave the cars. And then you got all the kids running around. There's where you see no system of them cutting. I get scared. When I go down Plymouth Avenue, I'm watching the kids and make sure they don't dart across the street. And one last thing.
Sure.
I go to Boston a lot. And when I ride shotgun, I know it's 52 miles till we get there, and it's another 10 to where we're going. So it's about a 62-mile ride.
Mm-hmm.
I started I started counting tags on cars. Last Thursday, 27 cars had the wrong tags. Check your tags, people. They do outdate. On your license plate.
And if you get pulled over, I think it's an uninsured vehicle. Yeah.
I said, don't get me wrong. I rolled down one window and I said, at the light, I said, ma'am, your sticker is November 16. Oh, yeah? My husband take care of it. Okay, fine. But then I started counting. Like I say, all the way going up to Boston, and 27 cars with the wrong tags.
And they probably don't even realize it.
That's right, because now you're responsible to get that tag.
So to kind of finish your point, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is common courtesy.
Yep.
As opposed to trying to cut off a person before you get to the end of a closed lane.
Yeah.
I think that it's important that people realize that maybe they should pull in as soon as they have the opportunity to pull in, so they're not waiting and forcing themselves into traffic.
Yeah. Well, I think this, if the sign coming off of 128 says left lane closed, and you ride to the left lane, be a cop there, give a ticket. You're breaking the law. That's how I feel. You get a few tickets in the morning. I understand that it's hectic in Boston and parking and all that. But, they're getting mad at you because you're in the right. I had a guy put his fist up at me like, hello,
Yeah.
And like I say, After 3 o'clock, I'll do all my business. 2:30. After that, I'm done. And I think the bus drivers in this city, all the bus companies, I know there's quite a few running, but to get down streets with the kids in the snow and back down streets and pick up these kids, I give them a will. We should thank them and give them as much courtesy as possible.
Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you, Rich.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great day. Somebody on Facebook Live says, this is a new world we live in today. And, you know, it's funny because is it a new world or are people just adapting to the same world because they can't figure out the difference between common courtesy and telling the truth? So I think that it's important to point out, if you feel that you have to take it upon yourself to enforce the law on the highway, then you, in and of yourself, are not displaying common courtesy. Because common courtesy would be just doing the right thing when you get on the road. Common courtesy would be doing the right thing and holding the door for somebody. Turning your directional signal on when you're switching a lane so you don't cause an accident. Stopping at a stop sign, which is the law, but it's also common courtesy. Letting somebody pass in front of you as opposed to jockeying for position. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. How's it going?
It's going great.
Well, this is my day off, but for somebody who spends 4 days, 365 days a year on the road to Boston,
Okay.
I have become a very offensive driver. And I guess you could call me a courtesy driver, but it's all about me on the road.
Okay.
And if I can throw my signal on, give somebody an idea where I'm going, follow the rules of the road, make sure that I'm in the right lane, and I'm not, like, going 65 because I'm somewhat distracted doing something in my car. Not that I shouldn't be doing, but I change the channel. Sometimes I'm looking for my coffee cup or spinning it the wrong way, or I'm trying to find the right mouthpiece. We all do stuff in our car, so, like, let's not fool anybody, right?
Right, and you
I always make sure I'm over to the right lane, or if I need to pick up my phone because I know that I got to pick up a call from my husband just to see, you know, if his doctor's appointment made out okay because we were worried about something. It was kind of an emergent call. I'll pick it up. So we do those things, but I make sure I'm on the right lane. I don't do that in the left lane. I pull over before I pick up the phone. I make sure I got a handle on my car wheel. I make sure my eyes are straight ahead. I do stuff because I drive all the time, and I'm in sticky traffic, and it's sticky wickets out there, and it stops and goes, and I haven't been in an accident in 30-plus years.
Okay.
And I'm in some pretty hairy stuff. But I'm going to tell you something about driving and observations I've made, and this might not sound too politically correct, but there's a lot of drivers out there that are in these shady vans who don't seem to know anything about driving. I don't know where they're from. I'm not going to make a comment about it, but they stick in the lane. You look at them, and they look at you like, what are you looking at? I'm like, are you for real? They're going 48 miles an hour. You're in a sketchy van. You got crap and dice hanging all over the place. What are you doing? Who are you? Are you from some desert somewhere or some weird place? Like, did you fall from Mars? Are you on the highway?
So
and those are the people. Like, seriously, they don't push over for anybody because they think they're fine.
Well,
those dudes are scary stuff.
So
here
we go.
I guarantee if they get pulled over, they're not insured.
So here we go. So first of all, I think it's important for everybody to understand the basics of defensive driving, which is you yield and you protect yourself against other people on the road. So I actually have had the opportunity to become an offensive driver when I was at war in Iraq, and we would actually push people out of the way. And you don't want to be that way. You don't want to use your vehicle as a tool to get in front of people because you may cause an accident. And we were allowed to do that back then. We were the ruling body on the road, and if somebody decided to get in our way, we would hit them. But you don't want to do that because your insurance is going to pay, and your insurance premium is going to continue to go up. It sounds to me like you're being responsible. And by the way, to add to the conversation just a little bit about what you said, whenever you're turning the radio dial, you're always turning to 1480 WSAR. Is that right?
Right.
All right. So
hey, listen, also, one other quick notation about driving.
Sure.
You know, I've spent 24 years, I've changed jobs recently in an emergency room.
Okay.
And your car is, I spent 24 years in the emergency room in a trauma center.
Okay.
Your car is a weapon.
Yeah, it could be used as a weapon.
Remember that, everybody.
You got it. And it always could be used as a weapon. And people have used cars as a weapon. Thank you so much for your call, by the way.
You're welcome.
Have a great
care.
day. But I think the important thing is if you are driving defensively, then the odds of you getting into an accident is very unlikely. Somebody on Facebook Live says, if I had carte blanche, and by no means do I intend to promote bad behavior, I would drive with a bucket of cigarette butts to toss into the cars of those who toss their cigarette butts onto the road while driving. Have some common courtesy and keep our roads clean. Toss the butt once, you get to your destination. That is a very, very, very valid point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Littering is not only a crime, but it lacks common courtesy. And when you take your cigarette butt after smoking it and throw it out of your car onto the highway, onto the road, that is littering. That is littering in the very essence of the word. So think about it this way. And I know a lot of times people who are smokers and habitual smokers, they tend to lack common courtesy when it comes to smoking around other people. And for those of you who are smokers and don't smoke around people who don't want to be secondhand smokers, thank you so much. But I tend to find that what happens when people smoke, they don't care who they're standing around outside while they're smoking. They'll walk into a conversation smoking a cigarette, and if you don't want to be a secondhand smoker, then they just continue blowing it everywhere, and you're taking in this secondhand smoke. But not only that, people who smoke their cigarettes, they get down to the butt and they throw it in your yard, on the street, on the highway, thinking that that's not littering. Well, guess what? If you're throwing cigarette butts on the ground, that is littering. You deserve the fine that your municipality, that your state has set for littering at that point in time. How about we just have some common courtesy, as the person on Facebook Live has stated? How about we have some common courtesy and wait until you get to the end of your drive and throw your cigarette butt away properly? You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I used to work for the government, the state, the DPW.
Okay.
Now, I used to drive up and down the highways, and we used to see people throwing litter out. At first, I used to call the office and tell the office and give the phone number. They say, leave it alone. You know what I mean? How can you leave stuff like that alone? You know what I mean? It's got to be enforced by the state. You know, they should call the state police and have the state police make them have a ticket, because I was right in back of them when they did it. They look out their rear mirror, they see the state vehicle there, and they still throw the whole bag of trash out at you.
Well, it's funny because I've actually seen, like right in front of me at a stoplight, somebody literally take their entire soft drink from a fast food restaurant and throw the whole thing out of their window onto the ground.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's okay.
You do it in my yard. I live on a busy street. Okay, and you get up in the morning, you got beer bottles, you got soft drinks, you got coffee cups, you got trash all over the place. They throw their milk bottles out, anything they got, like a muscle milk or something, whatever it is, they throw it out the window. And it's all trashed all over the place.
Now,
How can you keep something nice if you're going to have people like that going by your house and they throw things out the window?
Here's an important question for you. Do you think that the people who don't display common courtesy themselves are also the people who complain when something bad happens to them as well?
Exactly, yeah.
Because I tend to find that people who aren't willing to hold a door open for somebody as they walk out of a door, or people who don't use the directional signals, or people who throw cigarette butts on the ground, or people who don't pick up after their dogs, are the first people to complain that something isn't right.
Well, I have a dog, and I walk every day with my dog, and I keep all my grocery plastic bags, and when I'm walking, my dog makes a poop, I pick it right up. And the whole neighborhood, all over the place, when they see me walking, they see me picking that up. And they beep the horn to me, and they give me the thumb up.
Right.
Okay? When it comes to, I don't smoke cigarettes, so I don't throw cigarettes out the window. But we have trash in our car. We have a bag in our car for the trash. If we find like a Cumberland Farms or something like that, and it's filtered, we throw it in there, or we throw it at home. That's exactly how you should do it.
And it's funny because, you know, the front seat of my car, if you look at the ground in the front seat of my car, it's dirty. And it's because I don't throw things outside my car. So I have wrappers and stuff like that I usually pick up. Once I get around to a trash barrel, I pick it up and I throw it into the garbage
Same
dispenser.
thing like us. We do exactly the same thing. We do not throw things out the window.
Right.
I don't like doing it. And when it comes for traveling, I'm up in age already. I'm close. Well, I am 65.
Okay.
But to make a long story short, I used to drive a little faster, but I never drove in the secondary lane or the third. If I'm going to drive 65 miles, that sign says 65, I'm going to go 65. But now, since I'm older, I go in the travel lane. And I tell my daughters the same thing. I got 2 girls. I said the safest lane to be in is a travel lane.
Right.
And if you go 62 miles an hour, they want to pass you at 65. They got the second or the third lane to pass you in. And you're in much better shape to be safe in the travel lane than any other one of those lanes.
Yeah, I think you're right, because ultimately the statistics show that when you're driving on the highway, that you're safer if there's less variation in speed. So if you're cruising in the left lane and somebody has to stop short because you're driving too slow, then the person behind them is likely to get into a car accident. So
if they're going to put their brakes on because they're moving too fast.
Right, or they're swerving
and the guy
around
behind
you.
him is going to get wiped out.
Or
he's going to rear at him.
Or they're swerving around you, and that could cause them to wipe out the people
I see that
around.
all the time.
Right.
They're in and out of traffic. That is crazy. And after they get to the exit that you're going to go on, they're right there. They're in front of you, 2 cars in front of you. I said, what was the purpose for that? They're driving all the way in and out of cars, and then getting to the exit, coming to a set of lights where there's a red light, and there are 2 or 3 cars in front of me. Now, what did that accomplish? That's what I told everybody, even my kids and my grandchildren. What did that accomplish of doing that?
Thank you for pointing out littering, because I think it's very important to talk about. Thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye now.
See, which has turned into a conversation about people who drive on the roads. Somebody on Facebook says, how about the people that want to be a yellow light and block an intersection, which stops the traffic from flowing? They just jam up an intersection and sit there. Pisses me off. And you know what? That pisses me off, too. Thank you so much for your comment. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
The last caller has the right idea.
Okay.
Take a number down and report it to the police and send them a ticket.
Yeah, I think that's...
I'm sure they can get the address from a number plate to get the person's address and send them a ticket in the mail in regards to their trash throwing on the street or wherever. So that man's got a right idea. And they should enforce that law.
I think it's important that we realize that it's up to the police to enforce the laws. And a lot of times people like to take the law into their own hands. And what ends up happening because of that? People end up going and they end up getting themselves into trouble themselves. Why? It's not your job to enforce the law. It's the police department's job to enforce the law. Your tax dollars, the money that you spend on excise taxes, the money that you spend on your trash bags, the money that you spend on actual property taxes, that is designed to pay for things like police enforcement of the law. Right?
Thank you very much for listening to me.
Hey, and thank you for calling in. Feel free to call in anytime you want.
Bye-bye.
So, I think the person on Facebook Live, and actually the caller brings up a good point, because people who are driving on the highway, who are stopping at or driving 65 miles an hour in the left lane, are not only committing a crime themselves, but they're also potentially acting as the police officer themselves, which is counterproductive to the tax dollars that they actually spend. The tax dollars, when they go to the pumps and they pay a portion of their gas money towards taxes that go to your state or federal government. But the thing that the person on Facebook Live said is a lot of times people are only worried about how they're going to get into a destination, and they're not necessarily concerned about the other people who are behind them or around them on a road. So if they're stopped or blocking an entire intersection, guess what happens? They are, in turn, making sure that your life is a little harder. And why is that? because they're more worried about themselves than everybody else around them. And let's dive back into this littering conversation, because I think this is probably the most important topic that we can talk about when it comes to common courtesy. There's no bigger display of a lack of common courtesy than somebody who litters. There's no bigger display of that. If you are willing to throw your trash on the ground, so the other people around you have to figure out, A, how to dispose of that trash, or actually have to experience that trash, you are not only lacking of common courtesy, you're lacking decency. And the reason is people shouldn't have to pick up after you. There's only one, well, actually I have to correct myself. You only have, so I want to say that you only have one mother, but now that isn't the case. Now you can have multiple mothers. So how do I want to word this? Your mother doesn't live on the streets, or maybe so I'm trying to figure out a good way to word this, because you know where I'm going with this. Your mother isn't there to pick up after you, so you should pick up after yourself, and you shouldn't expect your neighbors and your friends and your loved ones to pick up after you, because that is a lack there of common courtesy. So when you throw those cigarette butts out on the ground and you think that that's not littering because everybody else who smokes around you throws their cigarette butts on the ground, doesn't make it right. You're still littering. You're still littering, and you shouldn't have certain privileges just because of the fact that you're a smoker. Like, you know the big one that I love? The smoke break. And if you're a smoker, call in 508-673-1480 and tell me why you have to take a smoke break every hour and a half. Tell me. Why do you have to take a smoke break every hour and a half? You don't see people who aren't smoking go outside and take a water break every hour and a half. But you, because of the simple fact that you're a smoker, are allowed to go outside and have a cigarette every hour and a half. Why is that? So, I think that one of the things when we talk about common courtesy, we also have to consider fairness, right? And I get it. You're addicted to something. You should be able to kind of go and help that craving, or else you could potentially be irritable. But the question becomes, what does it do to kind of morale? If everybody else sees you going out every single hour and smoking a cigarette and then throwing your cigarette butts on the ground, not only are they insulted because they're working the entire time you take your cigarette break, but then they have to go outside and pick up after you. How does that make sense? So I think when we're talking about common courtesy, there's no better indication of that than litter. And we started off the conversation earlier today talking about dog poop on the ground. How many of you have experienced, and I know majority of you, if not all of you, have experienced the instance where you're walking down the street or you're walking in the park and boom, you feel like you stepped on something soft. And you know what it is as soon as you do it. You stepped in dog poop. And it's because somebody who was at that park or on that street didn't have the courtesy to pick up after their dog. Now, you're walking down the street, and you shouldn't have to watch the ground where you're walking, because you might be taking the scenery around you. You might be looking up and around and looking at the sky. You shouldn't have to be worried about what you're stepping on, right? If it's a hypodermic needle, you shouldn't have to be worrying about walking down the streets and stepping on something that can make your day a lot worse. We do. But the question is why do we allow that to be acceptable? We as neighbors, because everybody has that neighbor who's doing that, and if you don't have that neighbor that's doing that, then you know what, you live in a great place, stay there for a really, really long time. But everybody has those neighbors who don't pick up after themselves, who leave a mess for everybody else to clean up after, who don't help out their neighbors in any way, shape, or form. You know what? As neighbors, you should all come together and tell that person, hey, you know, we expect you to clean up after yourself. We all clean up after ourselves. And don't do it in a hostile way. Have a neighborhood meeting. Sit down over a coffee. Invite them over for dinner and be like, hey, by the way, pick up after your dog crap. I want to use the S word, but I can't because we're FCC regulated, but that's exactly what I would say if I'm sitting down at dinner. Hey, pick up after your dog, S-H-I-T. So, yeah, I think it's important. And we're going to go to the lines. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Good morning.
Morning. How you doing today?
Pretty good. This is one for you. We have our trash picked up by a private hauler.
Okay.
It's a 6-tenement house.
Okay.
And the hauler prefers that you throw your recyclables and not use any type of plastic bags.
Okay.
Right? So what happens is that one of the neighbors in the house she has about 5 or 6 daughters. They all come here to dispose of their trash, and they put it in big plastic bags and they just throw it into the recycling bin.
Mm-hmm.
And the private hauler has left notes saying, please don't throw plastic in with the recyclables because it messes up the sorting machines,
right,
for the recyclables. And they just keep on doing it. They're using this house to get rid of their trash so they don't have to pay for the regular bags.
Which is a shame, and people shouldn't be
Disposable bags.
taking advantage of other people in order to get through life. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's something that happens.
And another thing is that they also use they use the house as a public laundry too.
Right.
Because there's a laundry room downstairs. But it's sort of like one family that's always monopolizing it. And it's her relatives that are using it. It's not, the family that lives here. It's like, her daughters and, whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
So nobody else has a chance to, or access to the coin-op dryers and stuff like that,
So here's a suggestion for you. Maybe you should do like the unions did and get everybody to come together, and that way you can talk about the rights and the wrongs of living in the apartment together. Because a lot of times what happens when you live or share a building with a few people is things get done in passive-aggressive means, and they don't get done appropriately. It causes arguments and all this other stuff. But if you go around, knock on every single neighbor's door, and you say, hey, what do you think about meeting up once a month? So we'll all sit down. We'll sit down over a beer. We'll sit down over a little bit of food, and we'll talk about the issues that we face. And then we can have a collective voice going to our landlord. What would happen then?
I know, but that just doesn't happen because everybody's in their own little.
Well, you could start
camp,
that, right?
Yeah.
You could be the person who spurs that on. And I know it sounds like a pipe dream, but really, all you have to do is go to every single person, and I guarantee you, every single person in your apartment has something that they'd like to be better about living in that apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got all those folks together and you started talking about it, you probably could fix the situation in your living area.
Right.
I think that, something like that, take the incentive upon yourself. But, thank you for that example. Because
But it's odd that people would behave like that in the first place,
I agree. And you shouldn't be taking advantage of other people in order to get by. Now, we also have to consider that there are some times where people are in situations where they can't afford things. And the only way that they can get by is, because I said the word should, but the only way that they can get by is unfortunately taking advantage of other people. So you have to figure out which is the case. And is it a fact that they just don't know? Or is it a fact that they don't have the ability to afford it?
Well,
and in my opinion, if they don't have the ability to afford it, that's on the municipality.
In this case, it's anything free is a picnic.
Well, and I think that's a conversation that can simply be resolved. That's a situation that can be resolved with a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day. You're live on the legendary 1480 WSAR. What say you?
Good morning, Rich.
Morning. How you doing?
A quick trivia question and a suggestion.
Sure.
When Harvey Milk was first elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors back in the 80s, guess what his first piece of legislation was?
What was that?
The Pooper Scooper Law.
No kidding. How about that?
People loved him for that across the political spectrum because he said this is ridiculous, and he made it against the law to not clean up after your dog.
How about that? And that is still a majority of municipalities around this country say it's against the law to not clean up after your pets, but people still insist on doing it.
I know.
It's crazy.
But my other pet peeve is when I was a kid and you were driving from Fall River to Providence or Fall River to Boston. I don't know if you remember these signs. They haven't been up for a while, but there were billboards on the side of the road that said they had the 3 lanes of traffic. The left lane, it said passing lane. The middle lane was cruising lane, and the right-hand lane was breakdown lane. And they don't have those anymore, and people don't understand that.
Right.
You were talking about this earlier.
You got it. And you go to certain states, and that's still up there. You can go to states all over this country, and they have left lane is the passing lane, middle lane is the travel lane, and the right lane is the on-off lane or a secondary travel lane. So it's funny because they do that in other states, and even though we have that law here in Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, I believe, has the law, and a lot of the countries, states around the country have that law, you don't see those signs everywhere, and people violate that law on a regular basis.
Well, out here, we don't have those signs in California, and the other day I was driving to Fremont. There were 5 lanes of traffic, and all 5 lanes were going about between 55 and 60 miles an hour. It made me crazy.
You know what's funny about California traffic? I've seen Office Space before, and have you seen the movie Office Space?
No.
All right, so there's a scene at the beginning where they're driving through traffic to try to get to their job. And he moves into the left lane because it's going faster than everything else, and then that lane stops. And the lane that he was just in starts going faster again. So then he swerves back into that lane, and then that lane stops. And then the lane that he just left goes faster again. And anybody who's been in traffic can relate to that. But
no, it happens all because everybody sees the lane to your left going faster, so everybody goes into it at the same time, which stops the lane. But I think just putting those signs back up would really, really help. That's my suggestion.
And in a place like California where traffic is huge, and a place like Southern Florida where traffic is like out of this world, you can really, really alleviate some of the problem by making sure some of the slower drivers are out of the left lane.
Well, as you said, if you can keep everybody moving at any speed at all, you'll get places faster than if it's stop and go.
Agreed, 100%. Thank you so much for your point. And how do you feel about littering? Just to kind of...
I think it's just ridiculous.
Right.
I think there should be some way that, because, a lot of people, they get a citation or a ticket and they ignore it. I think there should be a way where police officers can issue a ticket and make them pay $10, some amount of money, $10, just as an inconvenience, cash on the spot. Now, I know they're going to say that'll encourage corruption because the cops won't turn the $10 in at the end of the shift. But I just think something that is more immediate than 2 weeks later you get something in the mail saying you got a citation is necessary.
Right. Throw them in jail for a day. For littering. And if you really think about it, if you're contributing to making your society worse by littering, what lengths are you willing to go? Because you're obviously not concerned about the people around you if you're throwing your trash on the ground. And everybody has had that time where they've had their windows down and something blew out of the car and have felt really bad about that. And if you don't feel bad about that, then you should really examine yourself, because you should feel bad about stuff going on the ground and littering.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hey, take care. Bye.
You too. So you've been listening to Brain Drain on the legendary 1480 WSAR.